The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched upward like the inside of a mountain. Light from 3 distant suns filtered through crystal windows and painted the floor in shades of gold and blue. Representatives from 200 species filled the circular chamber, their bodies ranging from reptilian to forms that had no comparison on any world humans had ever known. At the center of this assembly, standing alone on a raised platform, Ambassador Park waited for the vote that would decide her species' fate. She was a small woman by human standards, with gray streaks in her dark hair and calm eyes that revealed nothing of her thoughts. She had served as humanity's voice in this chamber for 15 years. She had argued for fair treatment. She had presented evidence of human contributions to galactic peace. She had done everything right, and none of it had mattered. High Arbiter rose from his throne of carved obsidian. His body clicked and shifted as he moved, 4 arms folding across his thorax in the traditional pose of judgment. His species, had founded the Council 3,000 years ago, and they had never forgotten their position at the top. The vote on Resolution 7741, the Humanity Exclusion Act, is now complete, announced. His voice carried through translation devices to every ear in the chamber. 212 in favor, 17 opposed, 31 abstaining. The resolution passes. A ripple of satisfaction moved through the assembly. Some representatives made sounds of approval. Others simply nodded their various heads, pleased that this tiresome human problem had finally been solved. Park did not flinch. She had known this moment was coming for months. Perhaps she had known for years. Since the day humanity first reached the stars and found that the galaxy was already full of species who considered themselves superior, she had understood that this ending was always possible. Captain Daniel watched from the observation gallery above the main floor. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and hands that had seen decades of work on starships. His dress uniform felt strange after so many years in practical flight suits, but this occasion demanded formality. He kept his face still as stone, revealing nothing to the alien observers who occasionally glanced his way. The Exclusion Act meant many things. Human merchant ships would lose their trading licenses. Human colonies would be cut off from galactic supply routes. Human travelers would be access to the hyperspace lanes that connected civilization. In simple terms, humanity was being pushed out of the galaxy they had worked so hard to join. Continued speaking, his mandibles clicking with each word. Humanity will have 1 standard year to withdraw from all council-regulated territories. All trade agreements are hereby. All diplomatic arrangements are dissolved. Humanity may petition for reconsideration in no less than 50 standard years. 50 years. By galactic standards, it was nothing. By human standards, it was a lifetime. 2 generations would grow up isolated from the rest of the universe. Everything their ancestors had built would crumble. Park stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber grew quiet. Many representatives expected begging. Others anticipated threats. Humans were known for their emotional outbursts, their inability to accept defeat gracefully. The Council had prepared security measures in case the human ambassador caused a scene. "The United Earth government accepts the Council's decision," said. Her voice was steady and clear. "We will complete our withdrawal within the. All outstanding contracts will be honored. All debts will be paid. We thank the Council for the opportunity to participate in galactic affairs for these past 2 centuries." She bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that humans had adopted from several alien cultures, and then she simply walked away from the platform. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. This was not the reaction anyone had expected. Where was the anger? Where were the accusations and the promises of revenge? The human had simply accepted her species' exile as if it meant nothing at all. Coordinator, a reptilian female whose green scales shimmered under the artificial lights, watched Park leave the chamber. Something about the human's composure troubled her. Had studied humans more than most council members. She knew they were capable of great patience when necessary. She knew they planned for the future in ways that shorter-lived species often underestimated. This felt wrong, this felt planned. Up in the gallery, Daniel received the coded message he had been waiting for. His personal communicator buzzed against his wrist, and he glanced at the screen. 3 words from Earth Command: proceed with Phoenix. He allowed himself one small breath, the closest thing to emotion he would show in this place. Then he typed his response: Phoenix Protocol is now active. Across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, human officials received the same message. Merchant captains checked their cargo manifests and began plotting courses toward Earth. Colony administrators opened sealed files that had been prepared years ago for exactly this moment. Military commanders activated evacuation procedures that had been rehearsed in secret a dozen times. None of this was visible to the Council. They saw only what humanity wanted them to see: a defeated species quietly accepting its punishment. Dismissed the assembly and retired to his private chambers. He felt satisfied with the day's work. Humans had been a nuisance since their arrival on the galactic stage. They asked too many questions. They pushed into territories where they did not belong. They formed friendships with species that should have remained beneath their notice. Now they would learn their place. But did not share her leader's confidence. She returned to her quarters and began reviewing shipping data from the past several months. What she found made her scales rise in alarm. Human cargo vessels had been increasing their activity steadily for almost a year. They were moving goods toward Earth space in quantities that made no sense for a species facing isolation. They were not preparing to survive exile. They were preparing for something else entirely. She requested a meeting to share her concerns. The request was: the High Arbiter had more important matters to attend to than the complaints of a junior coordinator. And so the galaxy continued to celebrate its victory over the troublesome humans, never noticing that across the stars, a great machine had begun to move. Human families said quiet goodbyes to alien friends. Human businesses closed their doors for the last time. Human ships turned toward home, carrying not just people but everything of value they could transport. The Council had given humanity 1 year to leave. What they did not understand was that humanity had been preparing to leave for much longer than that. And when humans finally vanished from galactic space, they would take far more with them than anyone imagined. Park boarded the Endurance that evening. Daniel met her at the airlock with a cup of tea, prepared exactly the way she liked it. "How do you feel?" he asked. She took the cup and wrapped her hands around its warmth. "Relieved," she said. "We do not have to pretend anymore." The ship's engines hummed to life, and the Endurance began its journey home. Behind them, the Council celebrated. Ahead of them, the future waited. 6 months had passed since the Council's vote, and the galaxy was beginning to notice something strange about the way humans were leaving. Commander Grace stood on the observation deck of the colony ship Horizon and watched the planet below grow smaller. New Hangzhou had been her home for 20 years. She had raised her children in its blue-green valleys. She had buried her husband beneath its purple trees. Now she was leaving it forever, and she felt only pride. The evacuation was proceeding exactly as planned. 17 million humans had called New Hangzhou home. In 6 months, every single one of them had been transported safely to ships bound for Earth space. Not one person had been left behind. Not one piece of useful equipment remained on the surface. This was happening on every human world. 43 colonies were being emptied with the precision of a military operation, because that was exactly what it was. Trade Minister Cole had spent the last half-year selling everything humanity owned outside their home system. He sat in his office on Earth, surrounded by screens showing transaction records from across the galaxy. Alien corporations had eagerly purchased human assets at what they believed were bargain prices. Factories, mining operations, research stations, orbital platforms. All of it had been converted into raw materials, fuel, and technology licenses. The aliens thought they were taking advantage of a desperate species. They did not realize they were funding humanity's escape. His daughter called him from her laboratory deep beneath the mountains of what used to be called Colorado. She was a quantum physicist, one of the minds of her generation, and she had spent the last decade working on humanity's greatest secret. "The final calibration tests are complete," she told him. "We are ready whenever you give the word." Allowed himself a rare smile. "Not yet, we still have 6 months of theater to perform." Across the galaxy, alien observers watched the human withdrawal with mild interest. Most species expected chaos when a civilization was exiled. They expected riots and protests and economic collapse. They expected humans to come crawling back to the council, begging for forgiveness. Instead, they found order. Human facilities were handed over in perfect condition. Every debt was paid in full. Every contract was honored to the final letter. Human workers smiled politely at their replacements and answered every question before boarding their transport ships. Scout Captain had been assigned to monitor the evacuation of a human research station in the outer reaches. She arrived expecting to find desperate scientists trying to hide their work. Instead, she found empty laboratories, scrubbed clean, with detailed documentation left behind for whoever came next. "Where are your research files?" she asked the station commander, a calm woman named. "We have transferred all completed research to the Council Science Ministry, as required by our agreements," replied. "You will find everything properly and archived." "And your ongoing projects?" Smiled. It was a strange smile, thought, not defeated, almost satisfied. "We have no ongoing projects. Everything of value has been concluded or discontinued." This was a lie, new. Human researchers did not simply abandon their work. They were famous for their stubbornness, their refusal to give up on problems that other species had declared unsolvable. But she had no proof, and the humans were following every rule perfectly. She reported her concerns to High Arbiter. He dismissed them with a wave of his upper arms. "The humans are defeated," he said. "They are simply trying to preserve their dignity. Let them have this small comfort." Engineer worked 18-hour days in the shipyards orbiting Mars. He had designed the key components of what humanity called Project Phoenix, and now he was overseeing its final construction phase. Massive structures took shape in the darkness between planets. Ships of a design no alien had ever seen filled the construction bays. When inspection drones from curious alien traders approached too closely, they encountered navigational malfunctions and drifted away. When alien ambassadors requested tour of human space, they were politely declined due to internal restructuring. The humans were hiding something enormous, and they were doing it in plain sight. Commander Grace reviewed the evacuation numbers every evening. 17 billion humans lived outside the home system. By the end of the year, every single one would be safely inside the borders of human space. The ships carrying them were not heading to Earth itself. They were heading to staging areas, massive gathering points where the greatest migration in human history was being organized. The aliens thought humans were retreating to their home system to live out a quiet exile. They were wrong. Humans were gathering for a journey that would take them beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. Back on Prime, the Council congratulated itself on solving the human problem. Trade routes were redistributed among loyal species. Human territories were divided on planning maps for future colonization. They claimed the richest sectors for themselves, as was their right as founders of the Council. No one noticed that human communication traffic had dropped by 90%. No one wondered why human ships had stopped appearing on galactic shipping lanes. No one thought to ask what was happening behind the borders of human space. Tried one more time to raise the alarm. She presented her evidence to the Council Security Committee. The impossible efficiency of the human withdrawal, the suspicious amounts of resources being moved toward Earth, the complete absence of the chaos that should accompany an exiled civilization. The committee thanked her for her diligence and filed her report in the archives. They had more pressing concerns. The collective was making aggressive moves on the outer borders, trade disputes between the and the needed mediation. The humans were yesterday's problem. On the final day of the 6th month, Cole sent a message to every human leader across the galaxy. It contained only 2 words: phase complete. Grace read the message on her command screen and felt tears forming in her eyes. Not tears of sadness, tears of triumph. They had done it. 17 billion humans had been gathered without the galaxy noticing what was really happening. Now came the hard part. 6 more months of pretending. 6 more months of smiling at alien inspectors and answering pointless questions. 6 more months of hiding the greatest achievement in human history. But humans were good at waiting. They had been waiting for 200 years, enduring insults and discrimination and unfair treatment. They could wait 6 months more. The galaxy would learn the truth soon enough, and when they did, it would already be too late. 1 year had passed since the Exclusion Act, and the galaxy was beginning to fall apart. High Arbiter stood before the council chamber, and for the first time in his long career he had no idea what to say. The reports on his desk told a story he could not believe. 3 council worlds had been attacked by the collective. The plague had spread to 7 systems. Trade prices had increased by 40% across the board, and everywhere he looked the same question appeared: where are the humans? For 2 centuries, humanity had quietly performed tasks that the council considered beneath their notice. Human patrol ships had guarded the borders against raiders. Human medical researchers had managed disease control across 17 systems. Human manufacturers had produced essential goods at prices no other species could match. The council had never thanked them for this work. They had simply expected it to continue. Now it was gone, and the galaxy was learning what that meant. Fleet commander of the military paced before his throne, his armored body radiating anger. His species were warriors, bred for combat across 10,000 generations. They had considered humans soft and weak. Now he was forced to admit an uncomfortable truth. "We cannot hold the border," he said. "My fleets are stretched across territory that human patrol ships used to cover. We do not have enough vessels. We do not have enough crew. They know this, and they are exploiting every gap." His mandibles clicked in frustration. Then build more ships. With what resources? Human industries produce 70% of the precision components we use in our navigation systems. Our suppliers cannot meet demand. We are waiting 6 months for parts that used to arrive in 6 days. This was the pattern that repeated across every sector of galactic civilization. Humans had integrated themselves so deeply into the economy that removing them created cascading failures no one had predicted. Coordinator had predicted it. She had warned the council for months before the Exclusion Act passed. Now she sat in her office, watching the chaos unfold, and felt no satisfaction. Being right about a disaster brought no comfort. A junior aide rushed into her office with a data tablet. "Coordinator, we have intercepted a human broadcast." Took the tablet and activated the recording. The image showed a young human woman in a white laboratory coat, standing before equipment that did not recognize. The woman's name appeared at the bottom of the screen: Dr. Cole, Project Phoenix lead researcher. "Final systems check is complete," said to someone off-screen. "The gate achieved stable resonance for 47 hours during the last test. We are ready for full activation on schedule." The recording ended there. Corrupted data prevented any further playback. Gate stable resonance. Full activation. The words meant nothing to, but they filled her with dread. Whatever the humans had been building in their hidden system, it was almost complete. She requested an emergency meeting with This time, the High Arbiter could not refuse. The crisis was too severe to ignore any longer. "We must send scouts into human space," argued. "We need to know what they are doing." Hesitated. Sending military vessels into the territory of another species, even an exiled one, violated council law. It could be considered an act of war. But war against whom? Humanity had no allies. They had no fleet capable of challenging the combined might of the Council. They were a defeated species hiding in their home system, waiting to be forgotten. So the Council told itself. "Very well," said. "Assemble a reconnaissance force, but proceed carefully. We do not want to create an incident." While the Council debated, life on the border worlds grew more difficult. Medical supplies ran short as human pharmaceutical companies stopped shipping. Communication networks experienced delays as human-maintained relay stations went offline. Small problems became large problems. Large problems became crises. On the agricultural world of IV, crops failed because the specialized fertilizers that human chemists had developed were no longer available. On the manufacturing hub of Prime, factories closed because human-designed machinery could not be repaired without human technicians. On a dozen worlds, species that had barely noticed humanity's presence suddenly realized how much they had depended on human labor. The 17 species that had voted against the Exclusion Act found themselves overwhelmed with refugees. Others came begging for the same aid that humanity had once provided freely. But those species lacked the resources and the expertise to replace what had been lost. Studied the economic reports with growing horror. Humanity had not simply participated in galactic trade. They had made themselves essential, quietly and without fanfare, over the course of 2 centuries. They had filled every gap, solved every problem, asked for little in return, and the Council had rewarded them with exile. Now the galaxy was paying the price. The reconnaissance fleet assembled at the edge of human space, 12 ships carrying the most advanced sensors the Council possessed. Their mission was simple: enter human territory, observe what the humans were building, and report back. What they would find would change everything. But before the fleet could depart, another report arrived on its desk. This one came from the Collective. They were demanding the Council cede 3 more systems to them, or face a full-scale invasion. They had learned something the Council was only beginning to understand. The humans had been the shield that protected galactic civilization from its worst impulses. Without that shield, every aggressive species, every opportunistic faction, every ancient grudge suddenly had room to grow. Looked at the demands and felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. Not of though they were dangerous enough. Fear of what the future held. Fear that the Council had made a terrible mistake. Fear that by the time they understood what humanity had really been doing, it would be far too late to stop them. He approved the reconnaissance mission and prayed to the ancient gods of his species that the scouts would find nothing but a broken civilization hiding in its home system. Deep in his hearts, he already knew that prayer would not be answered. Scout Captain had served the Council for 30 years. He had explored uncharted systems, mapped dangerous nebulae, and faced threats that would have broken lesser officers. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he found at the edge of human space. His fleet of 12 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates where human territory began. For a moment, the sensors showed nothing but empty darkness. Then the readings started coming in, and felt his blood turn cold. Energy signatures filled the display. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. His sensor officer made a choking sound and recalibrated the equipment, certain there must be an error. The readings remained the same. "Captain," the officer said, "I am detecting over 40,000 vessels in human space. Most of them are of a design we have never seen before." Stared at the display. The Council had believed humanity possessed perhaps 500 military ships, most of them outdated by galactic standards. What he was seeing was impossible. "Take us closer," he ordered, "but keep us ready to retreat." The fleet advanced slowly, sensors recording everything. What they found explanation. The human home system had been transformed. Massive space stations orbited every planet, their construction bays producing ships at a rate that should have required centuries to achieve. Mining operations extracted resources from asteroids with efficiency that human technology supposedly could not match. And at the center of it all, between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, hung something that made forget to breathe. It was a ring of metal and energy, 5,000 kilometers in diameter, glowing with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Through its center, could see stars that did not match any in the galactic. He was looking at another galaxy entirely. "Captain," his communications officer said, "we are being hailed." The flickered and a human face appeared. Recognized her from council records. Ambassador Park, the woman who had calmly accepted humanity's exile 1 year ago. She looked older now, tired but triumphant. "Welcome to human space, Captain," she said. "I assume you have questions." Struggled to find his voice. "What is that thing?" "We call it the Gateway. It creates a stable wormhole to a galaxy approximately 2 million light-years from here. We have been building it for the past century, using technologies that we developed in secret while the Council treated us as a lesser species." A century. The humans had been planning this for a century. While they smiled and accepted insults, while they worked jobs that other species considered beneath them, while they pretended to be grateful for the scraps the Council threw their way, they had been building a door to another universe. "The Council must know about this," said. "Of course. That is why we allowed your ships to approach. We want the galaxy to understand what is happening." Another face appeared on the screen. Captain Daniel, the man who had stood silent in the gallery while humanity's fate was decided. He was no longer wearing a diplomatic uniform. He wore the insignia of a fleet admiral, and behind him, through the windows of his command center, could see warships that dwarfed anything the Council possessed. "We are not interested in revenge," said. "We could destroy your fleet with a fraction of the force we have assembled here. We could push into Council space and take back everything that was taken from us. But that is not who we are." "Then what do you want?" "We want you to watch. We want you to tell the Council what you have seen. And we want you to understand that humanity never needed the galaxy. The galaxy needed us." The gateway pulsed brighter and watched as a convoy of ships, hundreds of them, moved through the ring and vanished into the light of another universe. Colony ships carrying families, supply vessels loaded with equipment, construction platforms that would build new worlds around alien stars. Humanity was leaving, not fleeing, not hiding, leaving by choice, taking everything they had built with them. "How many?" asked. "How many of your people have already gone through?" 6 billion so far, Park answered. "Another 11 billion will follow over the next few months. We are relocating our entire civilization to a new galaxy, Captain. One where we can grow without the Council's restrictions. One where we will not be treated as second-class citizens." Tried to comprehend the scale of what he was witnessing. 17 billion humans, the entire population of their species, choosing to abandon the Milky Way rather than continue living under Council rule. And they had the technology to do it. They had always had the technology. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal it. "The exclusion vote," he said slowly. "You wanted us to exile you." Smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but there was satisfaction in it. "We needed a reason to leave that would not raise suspicion. We needed the Council to believe they had won. Your arrogance gave us exactly what we required." The transmission ended. Sat in his command chair for a long moment, watching the endless stream of ships passing through the gateway. His sensor officer was crying. His navigation officer had dropped his head into his hands. The crew understood what this meant. even if they could not put it into words. Humanity had not been defeated. They had won. They had won so completely that the Council would never recover. Ordered his fleet to return to Council space. He had to deliver his report, though he knew it would destroy everything the Council believed about itself. The humans were right about one thing. The galaxy had needed them, and now the galaxy would have to survive without them. As his ships jumped to hyperspace, took one last look at the gateway. In its light, he could see the future that humanity had chosen, and he could see the darkness they were leaving behind. 10 years had passed since humanity vanished through their gateway, and the Galactic Council had shattered into pieces. Elder, stripped of his titles and removed from power, sat alone in a small room on a forgotten moon. He spent his days reading human history, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. The answer was always the same, written in 1,000 different ways. The Council had mistaken quiet strength for weakness. They had confused humility with submission. They had never understood that humans were not afraid of the dark. They had grown up in it. The galaxy outside his window was not the same one he had ruled. 3 major wars had erupted among species that humanity had once kept apart. The collective had conquered 11 council worlds before a desperate alliance managed to stop their advance. They had fragmented into warring factions. They had retreated into isolation, sealing their borders against the chaos. The economy had collapsed by 40% in the first 5 years alone. Without human industry, without human innovation, without human labor, the complex web of galactic trade had torn itself apart. Species that had grown comfortable depending on human goods suddenly found themselves unable to function. But the worst damage was not material. It was psychological. The Council had believed itself the pinnacle of galactic civilization. The humans had proven that belief was a lie. They had built technology that the Council could not match. They had organized an exodus that the Council could not prevent. They had walked away from a galaxy that had mistreated them, and they had done it without a single shot fired in anger. That was the wound that would not heal. The humans had not lost. They had simply stopped playing a game that was rigged against them, and in doing so, they had revealed how small and petty the Council had always been. Coordinator had risen through the chaos to become a leader of the Reformation movement, a faction of species demanding fundamental changes to how the Council operated. She argued that humanity's departure was a symptom of a deeper sickness, an arrogance that had infected galactic civilization for. If the Council did not learn from this disaster, it would happen again. Some listened. Many did not. The old powers clung to their positions even as those positions crumbled beneath them. Then, on a quiet morning in the 10th year, a single human ship appeared at the old border. It was a small vessel, unarmed, broadcasting a simple identification code. The name on its hull read Messenger. Its pilot was a man named Samuel Perry, a trader who had volunteered to return to the galaxy he had left behind. Was the first Council representative to meet him. She found a middle-aged human with kind eyes and calloused hands, a man who looked like he had spent his life working rather than commanding. "I come with an offer," Samuel said. "Humanity has established itself in our new galaxy. We have founded colonies around 100 stars. We have built cities and farms and universities. We have created the civilization we always wanted, free from the restrictions the Council placed on us." Listened without interrupting. She had learned that skill from watching humans years ago. "We bear no grudge against the species of this galaxy," Samuel continued. "We understand that most of you had no part in the decisions that drove us away, and so we are extending an invitation. Any species that wishes to leave the Council and join us in the new galaxy may do so. There will be no tests, no requirements, no second-class citizenship. Only those who truly want to come are welcome." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Council officials tried to suppress it, but information had a way of finding its path through any barrier. Species that had suffered under council rule began asking questions. Species that had been membership began making plans. Species that had simply grown tired of endless war and economic collapse saw a chance for something better. Within a month, 17 species had formally requested passage through the gateway. The council declared such emigration illegal, but they lacked the power to enforce the ban. Their fleets were too busy fighting managing the plagues, holding together what remained of galactic order. Samuel Perry made one final broadcast before returning to human space. He spoke directly to the billions of beings who were watching, hopping, wondering if the human offer was real. "We were told for 2 centuries that we were not good enough," he said. "We were told that humans were too aggressive, too primitive, too emotional to deserve a place among the great species of the galaxy. We accepted those insults because we had a plan. We built in secret what we could not build in the open, and when the council finally pushed us out, we were ready." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentle. "We are not special. We are not superior. We are simply a species that refused to accept that our place was at the bottom. Any species can do what we did. Any species can build something better. The Council's power comes from convincing you that you cannot survive without them. We have proven that is a lie." The messenger departed, carrying with it the first wave of alien immigrants. Ships from 17 species followed, their hulls packed with families seeking a new beginning. The gateway accepted them all, its light welcoming them to a future the Council had never imagined. Elder watched the exodus from his window. He had spent 10 years trying to understand what the humans had known, and now, finally, he thought he grasped it. Strength was not measured by how loudly you spoke or how much territory you controlled. True strength was the ability to walk away from those who did not value you and build something better on the other side. Humanity had understood this from the beginning. The Council had learned it too late. He turned away from the window and returned to his books. There was nothing left for him but study, but perhaps that was enough. Perhaps, in understanding what had gone wrong, he could help prevent it from happening again. Outside, the ships continued to stream toward the border, carrying the hopes of millions toward a light that had once been human and was now something greater, something that belonged to anyone brave enough to reach for it. The galaxy had watched humanity leave. Now the galaxy was following them home.